The air behind the Grand Seoul Hotel didn't smell like money. It smelled of bleach, wet garbage, and the cheap cigarettes the valets smoked when the managers weren't looking. My name is Hana. For 3 years, I've been a ghost. I wear a black dress with a white apron. I scrub floors until my knees bruise. I fold sheets for guests who look through me like I'm made of glass. In the hierarchy of Seoul's elite, I am lower than the dirt I clean off their shoes. It was 2:00 a.m. My shift had ended an hour ago, but Manager Park had found a grease stain near the service entrance and told me not to come back tomorrow if it wasn't gone by morning. So there I was, on my hands and knees in the freezing rain, scrubbing a patch of concrete that no one would ever look at. I was invisible, until the moment I wasn't. The heavy metal service door slammed open with a sound like a gunshot. A body hit the wet pavement, thud, splashing mud onto my clean apron. I jumped back, dropping my brush. The man stumbled, crashing inches from my bucket. He wasn't a guest. Guests didn't wear suits that cost more than my father's life debt, only to have them shredded by knives. Guests didn't bleed dark, thick rivers onto the alley floor. He tried to push himself up. His hand slipped in the mud. He looked up, and for a split second our eyes locked. Terrifyingly handsome, sharp jaw, eyes like cold obsidian, but his face was pale, drained. "Run!" he gasped. I should have run. My brain screamed at me to run. But my legs were frozen. Tires screeched at the end of the alley. 3 black SUVs boxed us in. Men poured out tactical gear, helmets, assault rifles. They looked like SWAT teams from the news. But I've spent my life watching people from the shadows. I noticed details. Real police shout commands. These men were silent. Real police wear regulation boots. These men wore expensive hiking boots, mismatched, personal. Real police have badges. These men had nothing but darkness where their insignias should be. They weren't here to arrest him. They were here to erase him. The man on the ground, Yi-sun, I would learn later, collapsed. The leader raised his rifle. A laser sight cut through the rain. A red dot danced on the back of Yi-sun's neck. An execution, and I was the only witness. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was 3 years of being treated like furniture. Maybe I was just tired of watching powerful men crush everything without anyone saying a word. I moved. I didn't run away. I ran forward. I stepped over the bleeding man, planted my feet in the mud, threw my arms out wide, my white apron a target in the darkness. "Stop," I screamed. "Let him go." The silence that followed was louder than the thunder. The gunmen froze, not out of fear, out of sheer confusion. They were trained to fight bodyguards and gangsters, not a 5'2" maid armed with a scrub brush and a death wish. The leader lowered his aim. The red laser dot moved from the man on the ground and settled directly between my eyes. I squeezed my eyes shut, held my breath, waited for the end. A single, deafening gunshot rang out. But the pain never came. To understand why I didn't die when that gun went off, you need to know what happened 4 hours earlier. 4 hours earlier, I wasn't a shield. I was furniture. The entire hotel staff was terrified of the 40th floor. The guest in the presidential suite, Mr. Kim Yi-sun, had reportedly made a bellboy wet himself just by staring at him. When housekeeping was requested that afternoon, Manager Park scanned the room and shoved me forward. "Hana is quiet," he told the stone-faced men guarding the elevator. "She's invisible." I took the service elevator up, my heart hammering. The suite was bigger than my entire apartment building. It smelled of expensive scotch and something sharp, fear, maybe, or violence. Yi-sun was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in low, rapid Korean. Words like "coup" and "cutting the head off the snake" drifted across the room. I tried to make the bed silently. I dropped a pillow. Yi-sun spun around. His eyes locked on me, sharp, intelligent, utterly devoid of warmth. For a second, I thought he might kill me himself. Then he glanced at my uniform, my lowered eyes, my trembling hands. He turned back to the window. "Hold on," he said into the phone, voice flat. "It's nothing, just the maid." A pause. "It's like talking in front of a lamp. She's furniture. Continue." Furniture. The word landed like a slap. I finished the room in silence, burning with shame. My hands moved on autopilot, straightening sheets, replacing towels. To him, I wasn't even a person. I was an object that cleaned his mess. I left without a word. He never looked at me again. 4 hours later, my shift ended. I was changing in the basement locker room when I saw them on the security monitor above the lockers. A tactical team, moving through the service entrance in formation. They wore police gear, but I recognized the man leading them. I'd seen him earlier in the lobby, arguing with one of Yi Sun's bodyguards. He wasn't a cop, he was a rival. My stomach dropped. They were using the service elevator to bypass the guards. They were going straight to the 40th floor. Yi Sun didn't know they were coming. His men didn't know they were coming. It was an execution. I stood frozen at the back exit. To my left, the subway station. The ride home. Safety. To my right, the heavy steel door leading to the alley where Manager Park had ordered me to scrub that grease stain before morning. I could walk away. I could let the furniture stay silent. But something twisted in my chest. Maybe it was 3 years of being invisible. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the look on Yi Sun's face when he called me nothing, not cruel, just accurate. Maybe I was tired of him being right. I looked at the subway, then at the alley door. I grabbed my scrub brush, pushed the steel bar. The rain hit my face like a slap. I wasn't going home. When Yi Sun crashed through that door 20 minutes later, bleeding and dying, I was still on my knees, scrubbing a stain no one would ever see. Just like he said, furniture. But furniture doesn't scream, stop. Furniture doesn't step between a mafia boss and a bullet. And furniture doesn't change everything. The heat of the bullet scorched the air past my ear. Behind me, the squad leader dropped, a hole in his throat, eyes wide with shock. He hit the pavement with a wet thud. I gasped, my eyes flew open. Yi Sun wasn't unconscious. He was propped on one elbow, hand shaking violently, a small silver pistol smoking in his grip. He'd fired from the ground, threading the bullet past my head with impossible precision. "Get down," he roared, voice wet and guttural. Chaos erupted. The remaining gunmen didn't panic like cops. They scattered like soldiers. Bullets tore into the brick wall behind me, sending shrapnel flying through the rain. I stood frozen, my brain unable to process the violence. A hand clamped onto my apron strings and yanked. I lost my footing, stumbling forward. I expected to be thrown in front of the bullets, a human shield for a dying king. Instead, I was hauled behind the steel dumpster, landing hard in a puddle of filth. Yi Sun collapsed beside me, gasping. Blood poured from a wound in his side, soaking his white shirt crimson. But he didn't check it. He looked at me. His eyes were wide, pupils blown. It wasn't the cold, bored look from the penthouse. It was raw, bewildered, focused. He reached out, his blood-slicked hand grabbing the lapel of his ruined suit jacket. He ripped it off his shoulders and threw it over my head, shielding me as bullets sparked against the dumpster. "You stupid woman," he growled through clenched teeth. "Why didn't you run?" I pulled the jacket tighter. It smelled like expensive cologne and copper. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold it. They aren't police." "No," he checked his pistol's magazine, movements sharp despite the blood loss. "They're not." He didn't explain further. There wasn't time. Headlights swept the alley entrance. 2 more black SUVs screeched to a halt, blocking our only exit. Doors slammed. Boots hit pavement in rhythm, thud, thud, thud. Too many, way too many. Yi Sun raised his pistol over the dumpster's edge and fired blind. Bang, bang, bang. Then, click. The sound was deafening in its smallness. He slid back down, breathing hard, tossed the empty gun into the mud, turned his head to look at me. His face was gray, strength fading, but his eyes still burned. You work here, he rasped, gripping my wrist. His hand was hot, feverish. The service tunnels under the boiler room, you know them. I nodded, too terrified to speak. He struggled to his feet, pulling me up with him. His grip was iron despite the blood soaking through his shirt. Then lead the way, furniture. His voice was bitter. Mocking, but his hand stayed locked around mine. Because if I die here, you die with me. For a split second, I hated him. I hated the way he said it, like I was still nothing. Like I hadn't just stood between him and a bullet. Like I hadn't screamed, "Stop," when the entire world had gone silent. But his hand was shaking in mine, and the red laser dots were sweeping across the dumpster, searching. "This way," I whispered. And I ran. Bullets screamed against the iron delivery hatch, sparking against the metal frame. I slammed it shut and threw the latch, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped it. "Move," Yi-sun gasped behind me. I grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the laundry chutes. This was my world now, the labyrinth beneath the Grand Seoul. For 3 years, I'd navigated these cramped, steaming corridors while hauling linens, invisible to the guests above. Now the king of the underworld was crawling through them on his hands and knees, leaving a trail of blood on the greasy concrete. We collapsed in the boiler room, a narrow space choked with the hiss of steam pipes and the smell of industrial detergent. Yi-sun slid down the wall, gasping. Blood soaked through his shirt, pooling on the floor beneath him. "Pressure," he gritted out. "I need." I didn't think. I grabbed the hem of my apron, the white symbol of my servitude, and tore. The cotton ripped with a sharp crack. I knelt beside him and pressed the cloth against the wound in his side. He hissed, his hand shooting out to grip my wrist. For a second, I thought he'd push me away. He didn't. His fingers tightened, his eyes locked on mine. In the red emergency light, the distance between us collapsed. No boss, no maid, just blood and steam and survival. His breathing slowed, his grip loosened slightly. "You're insane," he rasped. "You know that." "Probably," I whispered, tying the makeshift bandage tight. My hands were covered in his blood. It was warm, sticky, real. He watched me work, his expression unreadable. Then quietly, "Why?" I didn't look up. "Why what?" "You're a maid." His voice was strained, almost frustrated. "You clean toilets, you fold sheets. Why did you step in front of a gun for me?" I tied off the knot. "They weren't police." "You said that," he grimaced as I pulled the fabric tighter. "How did you know?" I finally met his eyes. "They're boots." He blinked. "What?" "Muddy boots," I said. "Red clay. It hasn't rained in the city for 3 days, but it rained in the mountains yesterday. They came from outside Seoul to kill you." Silence. Yi-sun stared at me, really stared, like he was seeing me for the first time. That cold, calculating look from the penthouse was gone. In its place was something sharper. Respect, maybe, or disbelief. "I called you furniture," he murmured, a dark smile tugging at his lips despite the pain. "You did." I was wrong, his voice dropped. "Furniture doesn't have eyes." We dragged ourselves up the maintenance stairs toward the street-level exit. Every step sent fresh blood seeping through the bandage. Yi-sun's breathing was labored, his weight heavy against my shoulder. I cracked the door open an inch. Blue and red lights strobed across the wet pavement. The hotel was surrounded. Police cars, unmarked vans, men in tactical gear sweeping the perimeter with flashlights. Not just his enemies, everyone. Yi-sun's phone buzzed in his pocket, a harsh vibration against the metal railing. He pulled it out. The screen lit his blood-streaked face. Incoming call, Min-ho. His right-hand man, his brother. Yi-sun stared at the screen. 1 second, 2, 3. Then he silenced it. "Answer it," I whispered urgently. "He can help." "Can he?" Yi-sun's voice was flat. He shoved the phone back into his pocket and looked at the chaos outside, then at me. "The route tonight was secure. Only 3 people knew I'd be here." He swallowed, jaw tight. Min-ho was one of them. The words hung in the steam-filled air like a guillotine. He leaned against the doorframe, his face gray, his strength fading. But his eyes, those sharp obsidian eyes, were locked on mine with terrifying vulnerability. "I don't know who to trust anymore," he whispered. A pause. "Except you." I froze. "What?" "You're the only one who has nothing to gain by my death." His voice cracked, not from pain, from something worse. "You're the only one who saved me." Outside, a radio crackled. Boots splashed through puddles, getting closer. Yi-sun's hand found mine in the dark. His grip was weak, feverish. "So tell me, furniture," he breathed. "Do I trust you?" I looked at his hand in mine. At the blood. At the man who'd called me nothing 4 hours ago and was now holding onto me like I was the only real thing left in his world. "Yes," I whispered. His eyes searched mine. Then he nodded. "Then get me out of here." I'd never driven a truck before. The laundry van bucked and lurched as I ground the gears, swerving out of the loading dock onto the wet street. Behind us, sirens wailed, police flooding toward the hotel. "Keep your head down," Yi-sun groaned from the passenger seat, clutching his side. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white. "I'm trying." A police car screamed past us, lights blazing. I flinched so hard I nearly drove into a lamppost. Yi-sun didn't flinch. He just watched the road with half-closed eyes, breathing shallow. He looked smaller now, mortal, stripped of his entourage and his invincibility. "Where am I going?" I asked. "Guro," he rasped. The slums, I knew them well. It was where streetlights flickered and died, where police didn't bother patrolling, where people like me came from. We abandoned the van 2 blocks out and stumbled into a nondescript apartment building. Yi-sun could barely walk. His arm was slung over my shoulders, his weight dragging us both down. "3rd floor," he muttered. "End of the hall." The building smelled like mildew and old cooking oil. The elevator was broken. We took the stairs. By the time we reached the door, Yi-sun was shaking. Not from fear, from shock. His skin was clammy, his breathing ragged. He fumbled with the key, dropped it. I picked it up and unlocked the door myself. Inside, the contrast was jarring. The King of Seoul collapsed onto a stained mattress in a room with peeling wallpaper. No bodyguards, no silk sheets, no power. Just a man bleeding out in a safe house that smelled like rust and regret. The adrenaline drained out of him all at once. His eyes rolled back slightly. A violent shiver racked his body. Fever, setting in fast. For the first time all night, I stopped shaking. This was a crisis I understood. I didn't know how to fight assassins, but I knew how to survive with nothing. I moved fast. Boiled water in a rusted kettle. Found instant ramen in the cupboard, 1 packet, expired. I tore it open, dumped the noodles, and forced him to drink the broth. He needed salt, hydration. "Drink," I ordered, holding the cup to his lips. He tried to push it away. "I don't." "Drink." He drank. I found a bottle of cheap vodka in the freezer, grabbed a clean rag, knelt beside the mattress and pulled his blood-soaked shirt open. The wound was worse than I'd thought, ragged, deep, still seeping. I poured the vodka directly onto it. Yi-sun's entire body went rigid. He sucked in a breath through clenched teeth, his hand shooting out to grip the bedsheets. His knuckles went white. But he didn't pull away. "Sorry," I whispered, dabbing at the wound. "Don't apologize," he rasped. "Just finish." I worked quickly, cleaning the blood, pressing the bandage tight. His breathing evened out, the shivering slowed. Then, without warning, his hand fumbled at his wrist. He unclasped his watch, heavy, sleek, probably worth more than this entire building, and shoved it toward me. "Take it," he muttered, voice thick. "Sell it, go." I stared at the watch, then at him. "I don't want your watch." "Go," he said, stronger this time, almost a command. "Forget you saw me, go back to your life." His eyes were glassy, feverish, but behind the delirium was something desperate. He was trying to save me, the only way he knew how. With money, and distance. I pushed his hand away gently. It's too late for that. It's not. They saw my face, Yi-sun. I dipped a rag into cold water and pressed it to his forehead. They saw me help you. I'm not a maid anymore. I'm an accomplice. I met his eyes, held his gaze. If I leave this room, they'll kill me just to tie up a loose end, so I'm not staying because I want to. My voice was steady, cold, honest. I'm staying because I'm stuck with you. Silence. He stared at me. His jaw worked like he wanted to argue, like he wanted to tell me I was wrong. But he couldn't. Because I wasn't. You should have run, he whispered finally. Yeah, I wrung out the rag. I should have. Then, knock, 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 knock. We both froze. It wasn't random. It was rhythmic, specific, a code. Yi-sun's eyes snapped open. Fever forgotten. He rolled off the mattress with a grunt, grabbed a rusted kitchen knife from the drawer and struggled to his feet. His legs shook. His grip on the knife didn't. He positioned himself between me and the door. If they come in, he whispered, voice low and lethal, you hide. You don't look, you don't move, you don't make a sound. My heart hammered in my chest. Who is it? He didn't answer. The knock came again. Knock, 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 knock. Yi-sun's hand tightened on the knife. Then slowly, he moved toward the door. Yi-sun held the knife steady, knuckles white. He unlocked the deadbolt with his left hand and threw the door open. Standing in the hallway, soaked and breathless, was a young man in a designer trench coat. Minho, Yi-sun's younger brother. Hi-young, Minho gasped, stepping inside. He locked the door behind him, hands shaking. His eyes swept over Yi-sun's bloodied side, his face twisting. I thought you were dead, the news said. He stopped. He'd seen me. Standing by the stove, holding a wooden spoon, frozen. Minho's expression shifted instantly, from relief to cold, calculating menace. Who is this? He demanded. His hand slid inside his coat, toward his gun. The woman who saved my life, Yi-sun said, lowering the knife but not putting it away. He slumped back onto the mattress, strength draining. Minho's jaw tightened. She's a civilian, Yi-sun. He took a step toward me. She's a loose end, you know the protocol, no witnesses. I backed against the counter. If the white tigers find out she helped you, Minho continued, voice flat, they'll torture her for information. It's cleaner if we... He reached for me. I flinched. Minho. Yi-sun's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the room like a blade. Minho froze mid-step. Touch her, Yi-sun said, eyes dark and unblinking, and I will take your hand. Silence. Minho stared at his brother, shocked. The king of the underworld was protecting a maid over his own lieutenant. Slowly, Minho raised his hands and stepped back. Fine, his voice was tight, but you're making a mistake. The two men turned away from me, voices low and urgent. Minho swore he didn't know about the ambush, that the leak must have come from the upper captains, that he'd been searching for Yi-sun all night. I tried to make myself invisible again. Old habits. I started wiping down the cheap laminate table where they'd dumped their phones and guns. A nervous reflex born of 3 years in service. Clean the mess, fix the room. My rag caught on something underneath the table edge. A small, hard bump. I froze. Crouched down. Stuck to the underside of the table was a small black disc. Smooth, professional. A tiny red light blinked on its side. My blood went cold. Minho, I said softly. Quiet, Minho snapped, not looking at me. We're talking business. Minho. Both men turned. I didn't explain. I grabbed the heavy glass coffee pot from the counter and swung it with everything I had. Crash. The pot shattered against the table leg. Glass exploded across the floor. The black disc crunched into plastic shards. The blinking red light died. Silence. Yi-sun stared at the debris, then at me, then at his brother. A transmitter, he whispered. Minho's face went white. I didn't. Military grade, Yi-sun continued, voice deadly calm. He struggled to his feet. Active signal, short range. I checked my coat, Minho stammered. I swear I checked. You led them here, I said, my voice shaking. Minho's eyes darted between us. I didn't know. They're already here, Yi-sun said. He looked at the window. Get away from. Crack. The window exploded inward. Glass shattered in a spray of glittering shards. A high-velocity round punched through the air, missing my head by an inch, and buried itself in the plaster wall behind me. Time slowed. I saw the hole in the wall, smoking, still hot. Then Yi-sun's body slammed into mine. We hit the floor hard. My ribs screamed. His weight crushed the air from my lungs. A second shot tore through the room, crack, shredding the mattress where he'd been standing. Sniper, Yi-sun roared. Minho dove behind the counter. Another shot punched through the wall above us, sending plaster dust raining down. Yi-sun rolled off me, dragging me toward the hallway. Stay low, move. I crawled. Glass cut my palms. My ears were ringing. Another shot. The coffee table exploded into splinters. The door, Minho shouted. We have to. The door burst open. Men flooded in, tactical gear, rifles raised. Not police. White tigers. We lost the sniper in the subway tunnels. For 20 minutes, we ran through the dark, Minho leading, Yi-sun barely keeping up, me dragging him forward every time he stumbled. The white tigers were behind us. I could hear their boots echoing off the concrete. We climbed out through a maintenance hatch 2 miles from the safe house. When we finally stopped, all 3 of us were gasping for air. Yi-sun collapsed against a wall, his bandage soaked red again. Minho checked his phone. They've taken the tower. What? Yi-sun's head snapped up. 7 Stars Tower, your headquarters. Minho's face was grim. The white tigers moved in an hour ago. They're calling it a hostile acquisition. They have your files, your servers, everything. Yi-sun's jaw tightened. Then we take it back. How? Minho gestured at him. You can barely stand. You have no men, no weapons, no. I have the security codes, Yi-sun said, pushing himself upright. If we hit the south entrance hard, we can force our way to the server room before they lock it down. I grabbed his wrist. You can't even walk in a straight line. You'll be dead before you reach the elevator. He glared at me. Do you have a better idea, furniture? I met his eyes, held his gaze. Yes. 20 minutes later, we were in a stolen delivery van a block from the tower. I pulled a pile of stained gray coveralls from the back and tossed one to Yi-sun. Put this on. He stared at the greasy fabric like it was poison. I am the CEO of this corporation. I am not wearing that. You said it yourself. I pulled my hair back into a severe bun, tucking every strand out of sight. Furniture doesn't have eyes. No one looks at the cleaning staff, Yi-sun. I met his gaze in the van's side mirror. To them, we're just part of the building. 10 minutes later, the king of the underworld was pushing a mop bucket toward his own headquarters. The gray jumpsuit was too short in the legs, the hat pulled low over his face. He looked ridiculous. And he knew it. His shoulders were rigid, his jaw tight. Every step radiated barely contained fury. Shoulders down, I whispered, walking ahead with a clipboard. You walk like you own the place. You need to walk like you're paid minimum wage and hate your life. He adjusted, slightly. It still looked wrong. Slouch more. I don't slouch, he hissed. You do now. We reached the service checkpoint. A massive security guard stepped in front of us, one of the men from the alley. I recognized the scar on his neck. My blood went cold. ID, he grunted. Yi-sun tensed beside me. His hand drifted toward his waistband, toward the gun. I stepped between them, shoved the clipboard into the guard's chest. Emergency sanitation crew for the 40th floor, I snapped, channeling every angry supervisor I'd ever had. Someone spilled hydraulic fluid in the server room. Unless you want to explain to the director why the cooling system failed and the servers melted, you'll let us through. I leaned in, lowered my voice. Now. The guard blinked. He didn't see a threat. He saw a headache. He saw paperwork. Overtime, someone else's problem. He waved us through. Make it quick. We were in. I led Yi-sun through corridors he owned, past men who would have killed him on sight if they'd bothered to look up from their phones. We reached the server room. I swiped a stolen keycard. Beep. Green light. The door hissed open. Inside, the hum of the machines was deafening. Yi-sun ripped off the janitor's cap and threw himself at the main terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard, bypassing firewalls, cracking encryptions. I'm in, he whispered. I stood by the glass door, watching the hallway. My heart hammered against my ribs. Accessing communication logs from last night, Yi-sun muttered. If I can find who authorized the hit. His fingers froze. Hana. His voice dropped. I found it. But I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at the reflection in the glass door. Behind us, at the end of the hallway, the elevator doors had opened. 3 men in suits, guns drawn, moving methodically, checking every room. Heading toward us. We have company, I whispered. I need 30 seconds to download the file. We don't have 30 seconds. The men were 20 feet away, 15. I looked at the wall, at the red box mounted next to the door. Fire alarm. I didn't hesitate. I reached out and yanked the handle down. Strobe lights erupted, alarms blared. The halon gas system hissed to life, white vapor flooding the hallway. Chaos descended. Through the glass, I saw the men spin around, shouting into radios. Employees poured out of offices, confused, panicked. Done. Yi-sun ripped the USB drive from the terminal. Go. I shoved him toward the emergency exit. We burst into the stairwell. Down, 3 floors, 2. Behind us, bang, 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 boots on metal stairs. Shouting, they were coming. We hit the ground floor. The south exit was 10 feet away. Glass doors, daylight, freedom. Yi-sun shoved the door open. And froze. Blocking the exit, arms crossed, surrounded by a dozen armed men, was Minho. His gun was already raised, pointed directly at Yi-sun's chest. I'm sorry, Hyung, Minho said quietly. But it's over. The fire alarm screamed. Strobe lights flashed. Sprinklers erupted, water pouring from the ceiling in sheets. Move, I grabbed Yi-sun's arm. We didn't go back. We ran for the emergency stairwell, bursting through the door as gunmen shouted behind us. Down wasn't an option. Security would flood the lobby. We had to go up. We took the stairs 2 at a time. My lungs burned. Yi-sun was wheezing behind me, his injury slowing him. I grabbed his wrist and pulled him forward. Keep moving. I can't. You can. 20 flights, 25, my legs screamed, my vision blurred. Finally, the roof access door. I slammed into it. It burst open. Wind hit us like a fist. The storm hadn't let up. 30 stories above the city, the wind was ferocious, whipping rain into our faces, tearing at our clothes. I stumbled forward, gasping. Yi-sun collapsed against the parapet, clutching the USB drive under his jacket. His hands shook as he pulled out the tablet he'd grabbed from the server room. Come on, he muttered, swiping frantically. Water streamed down the screen. Show me it's Minho. The file decrypted. Green text flashed across the screen. Authorization code, CS001. Yi-sun froze. The tablet slipped in his grip. His face went white. No, he whispered. What? I shouted over the wind. Is it Minho? He didn't answer. I grabbed the tablet from his hands. The name on the screen wasn't Minho. Chairman Sangwoo. Your uncle, I looked at him, the man who raised you. Yi-sun's jaw worked. His eyes stared at nothing. He sat at my table yesterday, he said, voice hollow. He poured my tea. He told me I was the son he never had. His hand opened. The tablet slipped from his fingers, hit the ground, cracked. He ordered the hit, Yi-sun's voice broke. He wants the empire for himself. The fight went out of him. Not the bullet wound, not the exhaustion. The betrayal. He slumped against the wall, slid down, sat in the rain with his head in his hands. It's over, he whispered. If he wants me dead, I'm dead. He looked up at me. Rain streamed down his face. There's nowhere to run, Hana. I stared at him. This powerful man, this king, sitting in the rain like a broken boy. Something hot surged through me, hotter than the cold, hotter than fear. Ray. I walked over, grabbed the collar of his ridiculous janitor jumpsuit, and hauled him to his feet. Smack. The sound of my hand hitting his cheek cracked like a whip. Yi-sun's head snapped to the side. He looked back at me, eyes wide, stunned. I didn't drag you through a sewer, stitch you up with my apron, and break into a fortress just so you could give up because your feelings are hurt. I shoved him back against the wall. I don't care who he is. My voice was shaking. I saved your life in that alley, which means your life belongs to me until I say otherwise. I grabbed his face, forced him to look at me. So get up. Silence. Just the rain, the wind, his breathing. Yi-sun stared at me. Something shifted in his eyes, the despair cracked. Behind it, something sharper, fiercer. He opened his mouth. Bam! The roof access door slammed open. 4 men stepped out into the rain, not security guards, elite, the uncle's personal guard. They raised their weapons. We were trapped. 30 stories up. Nowhere to go but down. One of the guards stepped forward, radio in hand. We have them. Yi-sun's hand found mine in the dark. His grip was iron. Do you trust me? He whispered. I looked at him, at the edge of the roof behind us, at the drop. What? Do you trust me? The guards advanced, 10 feet, 5. I looked into his eyes. Yes. Then hold on. And he ran. Straight for the edge. Dragging me with him. We ran. Straight toward the edge. Stop them. Gunshots cracked through the rain. Bullets sparked off the concrete behind us. 5 feet from the parapet. A voice cut through the storm. Hold your fire. The shooting stopped. Yi-sun skidded to a halt. I slammed into his back. We both turned. The guards parted. A figure stepped through, holding a black umbrella, shielding himself from the rain that soaked the rest of us to the bone. Chairman Sangwoo. He looked at Yi-sun with pity, disgust, like one might look at a sick dog. You always were sentimental, nephew, Sangwoo said, voice carrying over the wind. Trusting the help, it's why you're weak. His gaze shifted to me. He didn't see a threat, he saw a tool. He smiled, grandfatherly, it made my skin crawl. And you, he said, the maid. He took a step closer, safe behind his wall of guns. I know about your father, Hana, the gambling debts, the loan sharks threatening to take his fingers. My blood went cold. I'll make you a deal. He tilted his head. Push him, just a little shove. He gestured at Yi-sun, standing on the edge, swaying. And I will clear your father's debt, $1 million, cash. Silence. Just the rain, the wind. You can be free, Sangwoo whispered. I looked at Yi-sun. He was staring at his uncle, resigned, broken. He didn't look at me. $1 million. More than I could earn in 10 lifetimes. Freedom, safety. All I had to do was let gravity take the man who dragged me into this nightmare. I lowered my head. You promise? I asked, my voice small. I am a man of my word, Sangwoo smiled. I walked toward Yi-sun. The guards lowered their weapons slightly, expecting a show. I reached into the pocket of my jumpsuit. My hand closed around the industrial solvent bottle I'd swiped from the supply cart. I stopped beside Yi-sun. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He looked at me. Betrayal flashed in his eyes. Then I spun around. "Eat this." I squeezed the trigger, spraying chemical solvent directly into the faces of the two closest guards. They screamed, clawed at their eyes, the chemical burned. "Jump!" I grabbed Yi-sun's hand. "What? Now?" We threw ourselves backward. Over the edge. For one terrifying second, weightless. Falling through rain and darkness. Then, crash. We slammed onto metal. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. My vision whited out. Window washing platform. 10 feet below the roof, suspended by cables. I gasped, rolled onto my side. Above us, Sang-woo's face appeared over the parapet, eyes wide. "Shoot them." Snap. The left cable sheared in half. The platform lurched, swinging vertical. I screamed as I slid toward the edge, fingers scrabbling against wet metal. Empty air beneath my feet. A hand clamped onto my wrist. Iron grip. I looked up. Yi-sun was hanging from the right cable with one arm, his other hand locked around my wrist. 30 stories of nothing below us. We dangled, spinning. The wind battered us against the glass facade. "I've got you," he yelled. "You're bleeding." "I've got you." Above, muzzle flashes. Bullets pinged off the metal platform. Yi-sun looked down at me, rain streaming off his face, blood seeping through his shirt. And he grinned. Wild, terrified, alive. "If we survive this," he shouted over the wind, "I'm never letting you clean anything again." The cable groaned. Started to fray. "Yi-sun. Hold on." He swung us toward the building, once, twice. On the third swing, he let go. We crashed through a window. Glass exploded. We hit carpet, rolled, stopped. Silence. I lay on my back, gasping, bleeding, covered in glass. Alive. Yi-sun was beside me, breathing hard. "You're insane," I whispered. "Yeah," he started laughing, delirious, exhausted. "Yeah, I am." Above us shouting, boots on stairs. He grabbed my hand. "Can you run?" I looked at him, at his bloody smile, at the madness in his eyes. I started laughing too. "Yeah." "Then let's go." We ran through the building, blood trailing behind us, alarms screaming. Guards flooded the hallways. Yi-sun pulled me into a supply closet, his hand over my mouth as boots thundered past. "We need to get out," I whispered. "No," his eyes were sharp, focused. "We need to end this." "How?" He pulled out his phone, bloodied, cracked, still working. "I'm calling everyone." 24 hours later. The storm had cleared, but inside the Seven Stars boardroom, the air was suffocating. Chairman Sang-woo sat at the head of the massive mahogany table, surrounded by 20 captains. He looked mournful, a perfect performance. "It is with a heavy heart," he began, voice trembling with fake grief, "that I confirm the tragic death of my nephew." He raised a glass. "To Yi-sun." Boom. The oak double doors didn't open. They were kicked open, hard enough to crack the wood. The room went silent. Yi-sun walked in. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wore a black tactical shirt that did nothing to hide the bandages wrapped around his ribs. Bruises darkened his jaw. Blood still stained his collar. He looked like a revenant crawled out of hell to collect a debt. And beside him, not behind him, never behind him again, was me. I wasn't wearing an apron. I wore a sharp midnight blue dress, head high, eyes scanning the room with the same intensity I used to scan for dust. Sang-woo's glass slipped from his fingers. Crash. It shattered on the floor. "Security," he shrieked, pointing with a shaking hand. "Kill them." The guards lining the walls didn't move. I said, "Kill THEM." "Nothing." Minho stepped forward from his position by the window. He looked at his uncle, then at his brother. He bowed, low, respectful. "The chairman is speaking," Minho said coldly, "and he's not finished." "Traitor," Sangwoo roared. He yanked a pistol from his jacket. Bang! The shot went wide, hit the ceiling. Chaos erupted. The captains loyal to Sangwoo flipped the table. Wood splintered, glass shattered. It was a brawl, violent, fast, brutal. Yi-sun moved like a weapon, disarming, breaking, surviving. I pressed against the wall, heart hammering. I wasn't a fighter. But I could see. Movement. Mezzanine level, above. A gunman, hidden in shadow, raising a silenced pistol. Aiming at the back of Yi-sun's head. Jae-sun. He couldn't hear me over the chaos. I didn't think. I grabbed the crystal ashtray from the side table, 5 pounds of jagged glass, and hurled it. It didn't hit the gunman, but it smashed into the railing next to his face, ruined his aim. The bullet went wide, shattered a vase. Yi-sun spun, saw the threat. Bang, bang. The assassin dropped. The room fell silent. Bodies on the floor, loyalists subdued, guards holding the exits. Yi-sun walked toward his uncle. Sangwoo was cowering in his chair, breath ragged. Yi-sun placed a phone on the table. "Call the police," he said quietly. "Confess to ordering the hit. Confess to embezzlement." His voice was calm, cold. "Go to prison." Sangwoo's hands shook. "And if I don't?" Yi-sun gestured to the door. A team in black tactical gear stood waiting. "Then I leave you to them." He leaned in. "And they are not as sentimental as I am." Sangwoo picked up the phone. His hands trembled as he dialed. Yi-sun turned away, walked toward me. Blood on his knuckles, exhaustion in his eyes. But when he looked at me, really looked, something softened. He placed a hand on my shoulder, pulled me to his side, turned to face the room of terrified men. "This is Hana," he announced. His voice left no room for argument. "She sees everything. She speaks for me." He met every gaze in the room. "Anyone who disrespects her, disrespects me." A pause. "And you know what happens to people who disrespect me." 3 weeks later, I stood in the penthouse suite of the Grand Seoul Hotel, the same room where he'd called me furniture. But now the view was different. Yi-sun stood by the window, watching the city. His wounds had healed, mostly. "You're starring," he said without turning. "You're bleeding through your shirt again," I replied. He looked down, sighed. "So I am." I walked over with a first aid kit. "Sit." "I don't take orders from." "Sit." He sat. I peeled back his shirt, examining the stitches. "You're terrible at following doctor's orders." "I had a good teacher for disobedience." He caught my wrist gently. "Hana." I looked up. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not running." "I couldn't." I met his eyes. "You said it yourself, I'm stuck with you." He smiled, a real one this time. "Good." He pulled me closer. "Because I'm not letting you go." A week later, I was back at the Grand Seoul Hotel. Not because I needed the money. Yi-sun had cleared my father's debt, just as his uncle had promised, though under very different circumstances. I was there because I didn't know how to be anything other than invisible. I was on my knees in the lobby, polishing the brass railing of the grand staircase. "Hana, please," Manager Park stammered, hovering over me, sweating, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "You don't have to do that. Take a break. Take the day off. Take the month off." He looked terrified. He knew who I'd left with that night. He knew I'd seen the devil and lived. "I'm just finishing my shift, Manager Park," I said quietly. I didn't get to finish. Through the glass revolving doors, I saw them. 5 matte black sedans pulled up with military precision. Valets scattered. Doors opened. Men in suits stepped out, forming a perimeter. The lobby went silent. Guests stopped talking. Manager Park looked like he might faint. Yi-sun stepped out of the lead car. Immaculate. The blood, the grime, the janitor's jumpsuit gone. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit like armor. He walked through the doors, his presence filling the room. He didn't look at the receptionists, didn't look at the guests. He walked straight toward me. I stood up, clutching my polishing rag. He stopped a foot away, looked at the rag in my hand, then up at my eyes. A small smile played on his lips. "I told you," he said, voice low and smooth. "I'm not letting you clean anymore." "I have a contract," I said, voice trembling. "I bought the hotel this morning." He said it simply, like buying coffee. "Your contract is terminated." The lobby rippled with whispers. He took a step closer, ignoring the hundreds of eyes watching. "I don't need a maid, Hana." His voice dropped. "I have an army of soldiers who can shoot, a boardroom of captains who can shout." He held out his hand. "But I don't have anyone who can see the things I miss, anyone who isn't blinded by greed or fear." His hand was steady. "I don't want to save you. I want to hire you, be my eyes, be my partner." I looked at his hand. Then at Manager Park, practically bowing in fear. Then at the bucket of dirty water at my feet. I reached behind my back and untied my apron strings. The white fabric, stained, worn, a symbol of 3 years of invisibility, fell to the marble floor. "Partner?" I asked. "Equal," he confirmed. "I don't take orders." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "You never did." I looked at his outstretched hand one more time. "One condition," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Name it." "Never call me furniture again." Silence. Then he laughed, a real laugh, the kind that reached his eyes. "Deal." I took his hand. His fingers closed around mine, the same grip that had held me 30 stories above the city, the same grip that had pulled me from the darkness. He pulled me closer, close enough that only I could hear. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not running." "Thank you," I whispered back, "for making me visible." He led me toward the door, past the gawking guests, past Manager Park, past the life I used to know. As we stepped into the sunlight, I glanced back one last time. The bucket, the rag, the brass railing I'd been polishing. Someone else would clean it now. I turned forward, toward the cars, toward Yi-sun, toward whatever came next. And I didn't look back again.